move on to the main.
We're gonna move on to our main topic now, people. Thank you so much for watching us here on Periscope. By the way,
should we start a new one with the new topic?
Nah.
Let's keep going.
Mm-hmm. Let me just keep. We should. Mm-hmm. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, we're gonna. Okay, so we're gonna start a new one. The new Periscope with a new topic, but. So quick, you'll help you go do that, and we are
Star Wars versus Star Trek.
Star Wars versus Star Trek. Come back, and we're going to talk about that. But for those of you listening on the podcast, before we get into Star Wars versus Star Trek, Tim, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me. It's since you guys have been doing this, I've been kind of hoping that I'd be able to hop on to something. Yeah. Hoping that I was knowledgeable enough to talk about something.
We'll find out today.
We'll see. Disclaimer. For everyone who's listening to this podcast, I guarantee you possibly know more about Star Trek than I do. So, I just want to let you know
to the internet, and the internet knows all.
The internet knows everything.
Well, I'm just putting it out there, just in case someone's like, hey, you didn't talk about blah, blah, blah. You know what? I haven't seen every single Star Trek thing in the world, but I love it, alright? And you can't get between a man and his love.
No, you can't. Speaking of a man and his love, Tim, you got engaged recently.
Oh, yes.
What?
Joe Krabs.
Oh, Joe.
Yes, I got engaged recently. A couple weeks ago.
I'm so out of the loop. Oh my gosh. Congrats, dude.
Thanks, man.
Wow.
Yes. I'm not sure how much you all out there care, but
yeah, no. Hey, did she like Star Trek too?
Actually, yes. Actually, my fiance's father is a hardcore Trekkie. He has every single Star Trek movie, like almost. He has like the full series of Next Gen. Which was his favorite series out of all of them. He is like into Star Trek. I took him to see the Star Trek exhibit at the Mall of America.
I wanted to go to that.
It was amazing.
You had a good time at the Star Trek exhibit?
Yes. Nerd!
You are a nerd.
I am a nerd, and I embrace it.
And also, I just wanted to say, so congratulations, man. I hope you boldly go. And then that's all I'm going to say about that. That's all.
That is awesome.
And accurate.
And accurate.
Hashtag
boldly go.
Boldly go.
That's it. That's all that's
so funny.
Okay to say. Boldly go. Everyone knows.
Moving on.
Moving on, everybody. So thank you so much for tuning back in us at Periscope. We are about to get into our main topic today. Man, it looks like it's just our heads. It's weird. I wish there was a way we could make it not our heads, but it is okay because we're going to talk about the wonderful world of Star Trek and Star Wars. Please ask questions. We want to be interactive with y'all. So if you are seeing something, you have a question or a comment or something, we're about to talk about Star Trek, and then Star Wars. Which is better?
It's gonna go down.
Now you ask yourself, what does better mean? Well, better in every way. If you have a question you want to pose for the Star Trek, Star Wars, or an opinion, please let us know. Me and Tim, we are going to be talking about Star Trek. We're going to be the Star Trek side, the Star Trek nerds, Trekkies, and also we're always right, which is weird, but that's how it works out.
Huh.
And then
interesting.
Joe and Hunter will be the Force.
Hard.
I'm force choking Matt, actually.
Oh, sorry. I thought we were going to hold hands.
You see how that's working? You see how
Dark side.
Set phaser
No, you
to
don't-
ignore.
You don't understand. I don't need Joe. Because I am the dark side.
You're the dark side? Alright. So, first thing.
No, we will still work together.
Yeah. Oh.
My very young apprentice.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Let's first talk
I
about...
can go for that.
Let's go with the first one, the thing that we were... See, because both shows are different. Mm-hmm. One was a movie and then had television shows. The other one was a television show and then had movies. Yes. So it's kind of hard to be like, well, which movies are better, which television shows are better, because it's different.
Little orange and apples.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do old movies first and then new movies. So the original Star Wars movies and then the original Star Trek movies, and then we'll go on from there.
Sure.
So, original Star Wars movies.
Okay, let's also close this at the start, so we don't have to do anything. In the who would win in a fight scenario, Star Wars all day. Will you concede?
No.
Because I mean, like, the Force.
I will not confuse.
You're assuming that no one in the entirety of Starfleet, that not a single person could somehow scientifically figure out what the Force is.
Not even scientifically figure out. Mystically, all the other places they go to
have like different
Yeah.
Yeah. You're assuming that there's no planet in the world or that someone couldn't time travel.
No, it's in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah,
we know exactly where it is.
We go there all the time. That's our job is to find that stuff.
So like you can
I didn't do my research. You think I didn't travel there?
Yeah. So here's the thing. In a fight, if we're gonna talk about who's gonna win in a fight, Star Wars or Star Trek, I would like to point out that Star Trek is in a world where any little rebellion has already been quelled. Like, that's been quashed already. So if there was a group of laser sword people that were running around waving their force around, they would have already taken them out. Now they're just boldly going.
So you're making the mistake of assuming that I'm for the rebellion here.
Okay, well, even the Empire. The Empire got beat by guys with rocks. Teddy bears with rocks. So you're going to talk about the entirety.
And in the world of Star Trek, there really is no like supreme leader
except for the Borg.
Well, there's like
the main Borg guy.
No. I mean solely on Earth.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like because like
it's all council.
It's just all like council. It's like there is no like there's no really Darth Vader, if you will. Unless you kind of think of Khan, kind of.
Khan could be considered a sort
of the Star Trek universe.
So in a fight,
I'm just saying,
a straight up fight. So you're talking about
double fist punch. Yeah, cut off. You have lost both arms.
All right. So if you're saying the crew of the Starship Enterprise versus the crew of the Millennium Falcon, but that's sheer numbers.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say
there's like numbers. 270 like men and women on board.
Y'all keep assuming I'm saying light side here. No, I'm saying like
so the Death Star versus everybody in the Death Star, the Imperial.
But also the question is which Enterprise. Like, which crew of the Enterprise?
Let's go with the original.
The original?
Let's go with the original.
The original?
Yeah, okay. Because we're talking about the original movies, so we're going to go with the original. We'll go with the original. Captain Kirk, Spock. Because those are the people that people are going to bring into the argument anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, Sulu, all of those guys, Aurora, Uhura.
So here's what I would say. So, the boarding craft show up. Almost everybody gets killed. Spock gets turned to the dark side.
No, he wouldn't do it.
It's illogical.
Logically, it's
illogical.
But it is. No, it's not.
The dark side is
not logical. It's not logical.
The dark side is self-serving. Vulcans aren't self-serving people.
Yeah.
You are.
He would be a Jedi. He'd be a Jedi because he's completely devoid.
He would
nail that.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, I'm pretty sure everybody in the prequels, like all the Jedi, were just trying really... I just really want to be like Spock.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna...
He made his way. Yeah, get away.
Don't ask me to act.
Mind melding,
Question.
nerve pinching,
are
force
Vulcans susceptible to the Force, like mind control aspect of the Force?
I wouldn't say no.
Well,
because these are not the droids you're looking for.
No, definitely.
Like, would Vulcans? They wouldn't even fall afraid of that.
People with reasonable amounts of intelligence are immune to that.
Right, that's right. They state that in the movies.
So I'm gonna say
the flappy guy from the prequels was also immune to.
Oh yeah, he was.
So no, definitely not. I actually would even say most of the crew of the Enterprise probably would be.
Kirk might.
Maybe.
He gets confused by that kind of stuff all the time.
Only if it's a woman Jedi.
If it's a
woman Jedi, Kirk. Totally, 100% of the time.
Well, this is the original, so there are no women Jedi left.
This is the original Jedi.
Yeah.
It's the only Jedi. There are three original There are three. There is Luke, Yoda, and Darth Vader. And then if you count Obi-Wan, who has been killed.
Yep.
Those are the only
Jedi.
He's not a Jedi. He's not even barely... He's barely a Sith Lord. He shoots lightning. He doesn't really do anything. Other than shoot lightning.
I mean, for all we know, he uses a lightsaber. He just chooses
not to.
It's more effective.
He's old. Yeah. But... in a fight, if we're talking about Death Star versus Enterprise, because we always forget how big the Enterprise is, because we're usually only looking at the like that.
Yeah, yes. Like the Millennium Falcon could fit inside the Enterprise.
Yeah, for sure.
So so the Death Star versus the Enterprise, I'm gonna say the Enterprise, only because the Death Star's the worst. It's not fast.
It's stationary.
It's supposed to just like kind of float around in the space station, and then they could like go to warp speed, like look at it, and then come back, fire the exhaust port, and
and if anything, like yes, the Death Star does have that like huge beam of death on it, that.
But it takes a while to charge up,
and it's only on one side. So the Enterprise just flies to the other side, just warp speeds to the other side of it.
Yeah.
And then releases like a huge, like its largest like proton, grenade, and then destroys it. Like
now, if you take out the ship and you're talking about the people inside, I'm gonna give it to the Empire only because the Star Trek people, majority of the people inside the ship are scientists.
Yeah, they're not trained.
And red shirts.
I mean, they are military. They're all officially military. But they're not
military technicians.
But they're not trained like how
they probably have some firearms training, just like most of the army.
But they're all like the phasers.
But it's not like trained like how the stormtroopers are.
Now, granted,
the stormtroopers
you put 10 stormtroopers instead, 10 red shirts in a room.
So the thing about it is, wait, what?
So the stormtroopers would all miss, but the red shirts would die anyway.
It would cancel it out. It'd be like even because they'd be shooting and the red shirts would run and trip and they get hit by a laser.
But the red shirts would take out a couple of them before dying.
Probably.
Yeah. Like all the red shirts would die, but
and then one stormtrooper would like hit his head on a set piece.
Yeah, and then just falls up. So then, okay.
So it's really main cast and crew versus main cast and crew.
What do you think, Joe?
Well, let me preface by saying, outside of J.J. Abrams' Star Trek 1 and 2, Into Darkness, I know nothing about Star Trek except.
Well, you kind of watched Khan then.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
I thought that was awesome.
Weird version of Raptor.
So
that's a different universe.
So I don't really feel qualified, I guess, to completely put my hat into this debate here, but I guess from what you guys have been debating and what you guys have been talking about, there are a lot of different elements. From what I understand of Star Trek, it's a lot more. I don't know. Like I feel like Star Trek has a lot more. Technological weapons and gadgets and things that they use that could counteract a lightsaber, that could counteract the Force, or at least fight it and make it interesting. But then who knows? I don't know. How much do we really understand the life force that is the Force?
It's
in the old movies, specifically.
Right.
In the newer movies will be different, but in the old movies,
the main reason I wanted to get this out of the way because the scope. Like what the franchises are trying to do is so different. Star Trek, you're inspiring scientists to go to space and do stuff, actually explore, and that's why at that point there was no really big space battle that had to happen. There wasn't all this stuff because that's not what they're trying to explore. They're trying to explore what it's like.
You didn't really get space battles until Next Gen.
Which I think is why I just was like, oh, no, it would just be because Star Wars has a lot more of that combat stuff. Mostly scientists and people learning all this stuff. So then you have this empires conquering and killing lots of people.
That was going to be my other question. In the original Star Trek movies, how experienced are the crews in working together, chemistry-wise?
Because they live on the ship.
So they've been together for a while. It's not like an origin story where they all come together and barely know what they're doing.
The first episode of Star Trek. In the original movies, you have the history of the show. You have the history of all the show. So this is like years and years and years after the show.
And in the first episode of Star Trek, they've already been a team.
Yes, they were
already a team for at least a couple of years.
Before
the very first episode of Star Trek.
Because Star Wars. That's another thing. Looking at it is Star Wars. Yes, you have the very few established Jedi left, but Luke is a rookie as far as the Force and Jedi stuff goes. So you'd really be relying on people like
it'd be most. I'm honestly riding this almost entirely on Darth in the fight.
I feel like
because he literally blocks lasers with his hand.
And also people like Han and Chewie, who have been in plenty of fights and altercations.
Let me just say, Han Solo, as awesome and almost godlike as he is,
in coolness.
And Chewie, who is one of the best sidekicks anyone could ask for, any rebel could ask for, they would die at the hands of even maybe some red shirts, to be honest with you.
Han Solo doesn't die is the same reason Batman doesn't die.
Just because
he's just so much cooler than everyone else is.
And if you look at the original 3 Star Wars movies, like the only time he's actually doing super fighting was on the Forest moon of Endor. He got captured.
Because Han Solo is he's not a military guy. He's a cowboy. You know what I mean? Essentially, you know what I mean. He's just he knows street brawling and he can gunsling, but he doesn't. But he's not like a military trained killer, if you will. Which every single person, even people in the doctor, you know what I mean? Like even like the medical staff, they are trained in the military.
Yeah, so
in order to kill or whatever if necessary.
Yeah, if that was gonna go down, I'm gonna say that the Star Trek guys would take out Han and Chewie and C-3PO and R2 R2D2 like because they're like Data.
Yeah.
For example, they're so far advanced.
Yes.
In technology, like the Millennium Falcon slapped together. Compared to some of the things they built. So like, they don't have holodecks in Star Wars. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like the concept is crazy. However, if Darth Vader managed to make it onto the Enterprise, everyone died. and that's the thing. Because like lasers be danged. Like they just force push everybody to this side, take his lightsaber, just run it through, and then that's it. Like Kirk can't fight Darth Vader. Like Spock can't fight Darth Vader. Spock he wouldn't need to, because he would know that Spock is strong, and he would just go over there and snap his neck with the Force, and then kill everyone.
No, he'd take him back onto the ship and say, "Join us." Blah 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 blah.
And then
he would say no.
Yeah. Or Spock is pretty darn cunning.
But at that point, to save his life, would it be logical to join the dark side?
It might be. It might be. Or it might be logical to pretend to join.
Yeah.
In order to develop some other plan.
And get better powers and then kill.
Yes.
Like Darth Vader
did. So Spock would become the
Spock would become Darth Vader.
They would overthrow power. Everything would just kind of.
Let's do it.
I can see that.
Darth Spock. Internet.
Hashtag
Darth
Spock.
If you want to see Darth Vader train Spock in the art of the Force.
Oh, nope, I spelled it wrong.
And then he grows his goatee again.
Yeah. Also, just want to I want to throw this out there as we're talking about some like major Spock stuff. R.I.P. Leonard Nimoy. Yeah. Thanks so much for giving us so many awesome things. So much of your life and so much of like what you did. To bring us entertainment, to bring us Spock, a character,
actual science,
science.
The number of people who, I think, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, all these guys who are big in the science community now. Science. The reason they did it is because they watched Star Trek and their mind was blown. Yeah, that's such a huge thing.
So thank you for your life, really everything that you've done, and all the cool stuff that you actually went about doing. It. It's really cool. So thanks, Leonard Nimoy. I know you're not like watching us right now. Maybe you are. Maybe you're chill. Maybe you watch us weekly every Sunday. Maybe. I would like to think so. Anyway, but thanks, man. We appreciate that. Also, live long and prosper, man. Seems a little okay, but however, no, it's okay.
The Vulcans would still
say it.
Still say that.
You know, like you've always been my friend. That's what we would say. But I would like to say, speaking of which, it's a funny thing about Spock. Did you know that they were going to not have him on the show? They were going to take out his character, but he tested so high with the female audience.
They
left him in.
They kept him on,
Because he was the sex symbol.
It's the emotionally unavailable man that was the thing. Funny. It was the man that the ladies... Because the ladies, they knew they could get Kirk. They knew if they wanted Kirk, they could have him. He is a man whore, okay? Yeah. Kirk is a man whore. On this day, I am officially saying it. All you Trekkies out there know, Captain Kirk is a man whore, okay? Will always be. Yeah. All right.
He was like the kind of captain you would assume would be
the captain of Star Trek. You know what I mean? The closest to him was maybe Captain John Archer, but no one touches Kirk besides
the only person who is relatively as slutty as Kirk is the ship captain from Futurama.
Yeah, the short shorts. Zap Brannigan, who is supposed to be a parody
of Captain Kirk. Yep. But
yeah. So there you go.
So it's
cool.
Move past combat.
Yeah. So combat's done. Let's talk about movies. Which movies were better? Like when you watch the Star Trek movie, the old Star Trek movies versus the old Star Wars movies.
I think personally, that the Star Trek movies, and maybe just once again, because it had so much history with the show, like you had years and years of character development, years and years of relationships, that had like Kirk, like that's why in Wrath of Khan, in the original Wrath of Khan, it was when Spock died. and you had Kirk's reaction. It wasn't just, in this like hour and a half time frame, they built this relationship, and oh no, his friend has died that we know because the movie tells us that he's known for years.
Yeah.
You have years, and at this point, because they're older, like decades of time that has gone passed within their relationship building, and so then this one moment that happens, you feel that pain. And in Star Wars, even though it tells you, hey, this is how you should feel with all these characters, and it gives you the backstory, like even at the very beginning of all the movies, it gives you the backstory, literally.
Yeah.
But you don't see it, and so I think because of that.
So in the argument, which of the original movies are better? Your argument is all the TV shows beforehand.
No. All the Star Trek movies because
I'm just saying.
of the existence of the television.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Sure.
That is like the main reason why.
Yeah.
Because it has a context.
Sure.
Maybe if you took away the context, I don't know.
A movie.
I don't know.
Well, it's hard to say.
It's hard to even say because you can't because they literally depend on the show.
Joe, Star Wars. What do you think?
Well, I've only seen the original Star Wars.
And the new Star Trek
it changed my life. So
so Star Wars.
Yeah. Now
it was a cinematic.
If we look at the scope of movie history and the scope of like nerddom history.
Yes.
Look at what if you look at what Star Wars, those original Star Wars movies did for all of that.
Seriously.
I mean, the fact of me, like I'm not like the hardcore of hardcore nerds, but like I dabble in nerd culture, and the fact that I haven't seen the original Star Trek movies, I think reveals your answer, potentially right there.
For the most part. I think it reveals more of what your parents were into. Because like my grandfather was around. He was young when Star Trek came out, so he loved it. Yeah. But here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You take a poll of all the actors in Hollywood right now. You take a poll of all the directors in Hollywood right now, all of the animators, all the special effects designers, and ask them, why are you here? What are they going to say? I watched Star Wars when I was a kid, and as that day I decided I want to become an actor.
I will say that,
like that is, bar none, the thing. And Star Wars looked so good when it came out. People were losing their minds. Like the frenzy that happened in a pre-internet era was insane.
Yeah.
Like Conan O'Brien talked about how when he was a kid, he got to see Star Wars like 2 weeks before. Oh no, it wasn't even Stephen Colbert.
Yep, Colbert.
Who like is the guy when it comes to being an expert on nerd culture. His whole bit is that he got to see it 2 weeks early. Stephen Colbert took time on his television show that he like makes a living on to say Star Wars was awesome. I saw it 2 weeks early. You know how much he's talked about Star Trek? How much? I actually don't know. I'm asking you.
Actually,
probably quite a bit.
Yes.
He's probably an expert in that too.
But let me say that the reason for that is I think it's an age thing, because if you think about it, Star Trek was in the 60s. Like the original Star Trek was in the 60s. Yeah. So and Star Wars was in the 70s. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if anything, Star Wars had Star Trek to somewhat go off of. Mm-hmm. You know, as far as space, the concept of space, the concept of what in a movie form and on the screen or whatever, what you can visually make space look like, and make it look cool, make it look new, give the audience different things that they've never seen before. You know, I think in a lot of ways Star Trek inspired Star Wars.
I think anyone who would be there would say the same.
I'd say the same thing. You know, and you have to understand. And I think that also the reason why this is kind of because you're talking about a lot of people who grew up with Star Wars, right? And that's sort of the reason why it's in our main culture. But if you think about it, the people who grew up with Star Trek are a little bit older, and so I think that's a lot of the reason why is because they thought it was cool and everything like that, but they're not the main voice of our generation, if you will, right now, and so there's just less talk.
So let's talk about quick the new movies. Because the old movies, we're not going to get a general consensus on which was better. The old Star Trek movies. I will say that 4, 5, 6 of Star Wars, all 3 of those movies are better than all of the old Star Trek movies. Because some of the Star Trek movies aren't necessarily as bomb.
They weren't, they...
like the one where they go to the present day Earth with Picard. It's not good at all compared to episode 6, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Except for the Ewoks.
Now let's not forget that Star Wars did make some crappy old movies too. Though there was like the Christmas one.
Yeah, the Christmas
one. There was the Ewok movie.
Oh,
the kids. Like
that was for
it's
children.
not perfect. It
But
was,
okay. So we do the new
for the
movies.
children, man.
The two new movies.
Yes.
But of J.J. Abrams made a
Which
Star Trek
officially is in like an alternate
universe
than the original movies and the original show.
Yeah. And then
the
prequels.
Yep.
Argue the prequels, please.
Yes. So I understand. I am starting 10 feet in the hole, attempting to come out on top here. But opening statement: prequels suck. Yes.
Roll
but
credits.
there are some seriously great redeeming qualities about it.
Mm-hmm.
Namely, first, the lightsaber combat is insane, especially in Revenge of the Sith. As much as I despise that movie, the ending fight between Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi is insane. Because usually, Anakin Skywalker, excuse me, sorry.
The internet just blew up.
Yeah. Yes.
So I told the Brazilian dude Ola earlier today. So
yeah.
Awful.
You are going.
So
Now I feel that's
welcome
best.
to the club.
Here we are. So, the combat, because in the first movies, the lightsaber combat wasn't great because there wasn't that much room for good effects. In the second ones, they were good, but it was very obviously fight choreography. Like you can see the gifs of Darth Maul and Obi-Wan swinging where there's no way they would hit them.
Yeah.
But in the third one, they're trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
If those weren't lightsabers, they would be shivs and it would be in a dark alley because they're going hard trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
That, I think, by itself demonstrated so much of what was possible with the Star Wars universe. But yeah, no, the prequels are pretty awful. But so my argument for why the prequels are better than the Star Trek movies is because the second one was a reproduction of an older one, kind of, that was weird and fairly bad. Even though it had Benedict Cumberbatch in it, and he couldn't do anything about it.
Here's the thing.
I
He was a good-looking man on a sinking ship.
I liked Into Darkness.
Maybe solved death and didn't say anything about it.
Shh, we forget about that.
Yeah.
It's movie magic.
Exactly.
Here's the thing.
Movie magic.
Here's the thing about
Just
Benedict Cumberbatch.
sprinkle it on there. It makes it okay.
Benedict Cumberbatch was a ploy to get people to come see that movie. Like, I love Benedict Cumberbatch like a brother. We go to brunch every other Thursday.
He's a friend of the podcast.
Like, he's a friend of the podcast.
He's a
dear friend of mine. Alright? Me, Benedict Cumberbatch, Stephen A. Smith.
Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, Floyd Mayweather, Skip Bayless, all of us together. We hang out every day.
Not Vince Vaughn, though.
No, Vince Vaughn's
Or Vincent D'Onofrio.
Vincent D'Onofrio, yeah.
But what I wanted to say, the other thing.
Someone's falling.
Yeah, what I want to say is that the prequels of Star Wars were bad. They made a bad thing and had a good fight scenes to it.
Yep.
The new ones of the Star Trek movie had the Star Trek universe and then made the fighting better. Like, you saw there was actual combat in this universe, which was why my previous comment of the people fighting would actually be a little bit better, because you realize that all these people are fighting. They're military. They're running from spears and Into Darkness. They're not pushovers. You know, I mean, they couldn't fight the Force or anything, but they were like they were hardcore fighters, and Spock beat up a whole bunch of people, and Khan killed all those Klingons.
Was crazy.
It's
crazy.
It's
insane.
It was like Daniel Craig's Bond, but in space.
In space. And I loved it. I love the fight scenes in those. I think the new Star Trek movies were better than the prequels of Star Wars. Because the prequels of Star Wars took an amazing thing and made it bad. Yeah. And then the new movies of Star Trek took a thing that was awesome and amazing and then just made it okay. Amen. And there's a difference. There's a major difference between those two.
It was almost like, as much as it was cool for me, especially because the Star Wars prequels were almost a part of, it was like, I would say they were part of my childhood growing up. Yeah, it was just as much as the originals, but almost even more so
because they were the ones being advertised to us.
You know, they were the ones being advertised, and so it was really great to see those and to have like a Star Wars for my generation. Yeah. But in my mind, I mean, granted, I'm sure they planned on making those at some point anyways, but they don't feel necessary completely.
No,
you know what I mean? They don't feel necessary.
In all reality,
prequels, because you already know what happens.
Yeah, sure.
Well, in all reality, I will already say those Star Trek movies are better. Because the concept of the Star Wars prequels was rooted in such a giant flaw, in that the main characters of all three movies, all three of them, you literally knew what happened to them.
Yeah.
You know, Anakin gets messed up, gets turned into a Darth Vader. Obi-Wan Kenobi is fine, eventually dies, but we see it.
Right.
Like, everyone's we meet.
Good. Princess Amidala doesn't exist in the other ones, so he knows something's going to happen
and
to
then
her.
all of Alderaan, you see.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well,
and that's ultimately what makes 7 so exciting, because they can do whatever they want. They can kill off everyone in the first 5 minutes, because why not? It's not like they have to save them for an episode 8 that's already happened.
I remember when episode 3 came out in theaters, and I remember not even really wanting to go see it. That's how disappointed I was with 1 and 2.
Well, no, so it's called the episode 1 theory, at least in my, that's how I talk about it, is when you experience something as a kid and then you see it later and it's awful. I didn't come out of that until high school, because I remember I was in a high school classroom with a teacher who was referencing bad movies. It's and we all know episode 1 of Star Wars was awful, and me and 6 other guys freaked out. We were like, no, and he made us go home and watch it, and then we
honestly
realized.
I don't think I've seen episode 1 I don't remember the last time we even saw it.
The amount of politics in the prequels is insane.
Council meetings.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't understand. I really struggle to quantify how that is possible. That they're
it's because the Lord of the Rings.
What should we do? Yeah,
because the Lord of the Rings did so well.
Yeah, and George Lucas
was so cool. And
trying to cosplay that in sci-fi, and it failed so hard.
So here's another thing. With both both movies doing so well, there was inevitably TV shows that came out of them. Mm-hmm. So, Star Wars television shows, being Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, I think there was the Ewoks show, and all those, and then Star Trek, the original show,
and the animated series. For those who know about that back in the day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, which is better?
Star Wars Clone Wars is pretty darn cool. If you contextualize it for the age group it is designed for, it's great.
You know what? Star Trek, the animated. Am I the only one seen Star Trek?
I've seen the animated
series.
Oh, it's pretty good.
Just J.J. Abrams movies.
Joe's just sitting in the back.
Boo, Joe. Research.
Clone Wars. It is a great show, actually.
But Star Wars Rebels is pretty interesting too.
I haven't seen that.
If you ever taken the chance to see a couple episodes of that, it's basically like a rogue guy with a lightsaber. He's not a Jedi. He's not a Sith.
He just has one? That's
He's
cool.
not a Jedi. He's not a Sith. And there's a group of his smugglers, kind of like what Han Solo did, and they go through space and have adventures.
Cool.
And they're I thought it was interesting. Yeah. With the success of Guardians of the Galaxy, the context of the ragtag group of not quite heroes, not quite villains.
Yep.
But put in Star Wars universe, it's fine. Yeah. And I thought this was interesting. Clone Wars is okay. Once again, I think it suffers from prequel syndrome.
It does.
Yes. Which is where that Anakin's
as much as you love Ahsoka, you don't see her. Something's happening.
There's never really any sense of danger with the
for sure. And that's why in the TV show too, I will also concede that because the Star Trek television show was so great.
All of them were
so good, and that's where my argument earlier for the movies, where that's why a bunch of people are acting and directing and making films now. Why a bunch of people are in science now is because they watch Star Trek, and that's so big. I'm not going to fight that because that's true.
And correct me if I'm wrong. In the original Star Trek Wrath of Khan, when Spock dies, he is dead. Like, there is no resurrection of Spock at the end of the movie.
Not at the end of the movie, no.
Or anything like that.
Not at the end of the movie, no.
Is there later on?
I think he comes back.
Comes back, later on.
Yeah, but not
at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
See,
the impact of that was insane.
And I think that is what's cool, is that you get the death of a major character that you as the audience have spent at because those movies were made in the 80s. So it was at least possibly 20 years, or esque of getting attached to, dying.
It was probably one of those
things. And you don't
things,
really get that with Star Wars.
Yeah. It was probably the same sort of thing as when the first time that the Doctor regenerated. In Britain, apparently, people lost their minds.
Yeah.
They were running around what's freaking out. he hadn't done that before. They hadn't lost the main character before. Like that's for sure.
So I also think that when you look at the TV shows of both things, like Star Trek dealt with a little bit more serious issues like racism and sex because and life and death and like military actions and whether the ends justify the means and the concept of immortality or what it means to be human
and the concept of cultural imperialism.
You
know what I mean? Like, granted, I really don't know because Kirk kind of messed up a lot of cultures along the way.
So introducing sex into
I don't know if they did that on purpose to show what not to do, or if they were still it's the 60s. You know, and they weren't that ahead.
They were
of the
thinking
time,
that these poor aliens don't know how to bone yet.
Yeah, exactly. But
I think their accidental commentary is
but
worth
exactly.
But
it's still it probably is accidental. But still, looking back on it, it still has themes of cultural imperialism and.
Lastly, so the TV show is really good. Lastly, literature style, Star Wars like other literature versus Star Trek other literature.
Opening statement: Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, the video game.
Yeah.
You can try to play the Star Trek video games, and they all suck.
They're so bad.
I
tried them. I genuinely did because I was like, the Star Wars ones are good.
All the Star Wars games were
awesome. There were some really bad ones, but the majority of them were amazing.
The Star Wars ones.
Even the one
Lego Star Wars was good.
Lego
Star Wars.
Those Lego set off the
Lego actually rocks at making video games.
At making everything, apparently.
Well, literally making things.
Movies.
They're going to release a reality show soon.
Yeah.
The Real Life Emmett.
Oh, yeah. There's real.
Yeah, so first opening statement, Star Wars video games are insane. The Knights of the Old Republic is a mainstay. Like, understand, they remade that game, and it's online still. People are still playing it now. I could download it on my computer if I wanted to.
Yeah, because it's big, and people have created things in it. It's like World of Warcraft.
It is. It has like a whole Battlefront. It's one of the first like multiplayer shooters.
Yeah, and the Force was even pretty good.
Dude, Force Unleashed was fun.
I remember
awesome.
There was a Jango Fett game that was really awesome.
Really?
Yeah. You played as
Jango Tango,
or was it Boba Fett? You played as Boba Fett.
Not to say there aren't any dumb Star Wars games. There were some.
You only played as Boba Fett.
The arcade pod racing
Bounty Hunter the whole time.
You could go play
I remember playing that.
Oh, how dare you! I love that game.
I love that game. I sucked because I couldn't get to work.
Then there was the one that was like. You did pod racing and starfighting and lightsaber
battles.
It was really cool. It was like all in one. That was amazing.
So they beat it. They beat us
in that. Just for the video games. But the novels, there's so much more. The novels are amazing. As a kid, actually, like the reason that I can read so quickly is because I grew up reading Star Wars books and I started reading the Rogue Squadron series, and that's like college level reading. That for me, that was how I built my understanding of language, was reading Star Wars. I'm a little biased. But like the expanded literature for that's so good. Marvel's publishing Star Wars comics now. There's just I don't really know just like the major, Millennium Falcon versus the Enterprise, you lose because of numbers. Same thing with the literature because there's just so much.
Well,
even though they're all legends.
The Star Wars literature is great though. But the Star Trek literature is pretty cool too. There's Star Trek books.
There are comics.
There are Star Trek comics. The Star Trek got in with the X-Men.
Yeah, it happened.
Multiple times.
It happened. Hilarious. It totally happened.
The Wolverine got taken out by Spock.
Yep.
with a Vulcan nerve pinch to his body.
That's hilarious.
And so, that's a cool thing.
That is pretty cool, yeah. I see that, and I raise you Chewbacca screaming at a moon as it kills him.
Yeah.
That's how he dies. It's no longer canon now. Yeah. But there was this bit where he was running with, I think it was one of Han and Leia's kids, and they were like running the Falcon because this moon was going to crash into the planet, and like he realizes like we can't both make it, and he takes the kid and chucks him into the ship, and he's like leave. And Han's like, no, he's like, leave. And they fly away, and he turns and just like Chewbacca rages at the moon. You can Google this. There's an image of it. It's beautiful.
There's also what makes it a little worse is that Boba Fett. We learned that Boba Fett has been eaten by the Sarlacc 3 times.
Yeah, it was like a crazy ex-girlfriend. He kept going back.
He keeps going back to her. So I'm gonna say that makes it a little bit worse.
Yeah,
because they keep trying to push Boba Fett down our throats. Remember that time in 2000 where everyone was supposed to be on Boba Fett, and I was like, I don't like him.
It was
and
the
he
worst.
keeps getting eaten
I was really. I didn't know this until I watched a video critiquing because when they re-released the DVD post the prequels, they redid all the voice acting for Boba Fett as the New Zealand guy.
Yeah.
It was like,
interesting.
Shut up.
So there you go. Well, okay. Well, I'll concede that the expanded literature is a lot better. So I guess that's everything. Star Wars. Yeah, I think we're tied.
Because it was old movies with Star Wars, new movies with Star Trek, TV shows with Star Trek, and then literature was.
So we're going to go down to the tiebreaker, which decides once and for all, Internet, once and for all.
There will be no other debates about this.
If you hear anybody who says, "Oh, I wonder what's better, Star Wars or Star Trek," you send them this way. Who is better at making Christmas specials?
Excuse me, your bias is showing.
Yeah. Because you guys suck at that. Yeah, no, okay. No, but like an actual thing, let's talk about cultural impact.
Yeah.
Cultural impact of the world. Star Trek
takes it.
I think Star Trek wins.
But
go ahead.
Because
make your case first.
No, you make your case first.
Sir.
Cultural impact, please.
Yeah, cultural impact of Star Wars.
Sure.
Oh, really?
Really? Yeah. Okay, let me say this. Star Trek. And the thing about it is, Gene Roddenberry knew what he was doing. This man was a visionary. Not just for sci-fi as a genre or for entertainment.
Yeah.
But he knew what he was doing from a social standpoint. He took a multicultural, multiracial cast, which was unheard of in the 60s. At the time. Unheard of. It was a big deal having a female black, having a show, what was it? I think Julia, if anyone remembers that show. It was about an African-American woman who was a nurse and single, living in like New York City or something like that. Like, that concept was a big deal, you know? And I think that happened later, like after the show. So to have a cast
of multiracial
people,
as well as first on air interracial kiss ever was Star Trek. Between Captain Kirk and a horse.
And it wasn't even a movie, it was a TV. It was on TV.
Technically, Han Solo and Princess Leia are not the same race.
These are different planets.
Yeah.
But
actors. For actors. It wasn't about characters.
I don't think anyone's like, Alderaan God hates Alderaan. I would not have my daughter dating some kind of nerf herder.
There's probably some romantic fanfiction that has that.
Yeah, probably.
But honestly, yes. It changed the world.
It changed at least
and
that.
And honestly, if you think about how because so many stereotypes about different cultures, different races have been portrayed within movies and television shows. So when you have Sulu as
within Star Trek?
Within
all the aliens.
What?
A lot of the aliens were like
just white people in makeup.
Yeah. you know.
Hey, Star Trek wasn't perfect. Star Trek was not perfect, okay?
But there were more interracial people in Star Trek
and when it
started than in Star Wars.
And when you have movies, when you have a character like Sulu, right? Mm-hmm. And then at the same time you have movies like Charlie Chan, you know what I mean? Like being in existence and being an okay thing to watch, that is mind-blowing. Yeah. You know, like you have, and like it's just what it did for our culture. And I don't think it gets enough credit, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. But like, because maybe, I don't think it gets enough credit. Yeah. But I think that it honestly, because our parents' generation grew up watching Star Trek. And I think that it really formed, it changed their perspectives about how the world should be.
So what about Star Wars?
Yeah. Star Wars? So here, Yes, I do agree with that. Like that's totally true. Like, yep, absolutely. But I think and the other thing too, like to Star Trek's credit, is Star Wars was part of the cultural impact of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Like we talked about already, is that part of the reason Star Wars was successful was because of that. But the wide acceptance of sci-fi as a genre was Star Wars. Star Trek, you were still a nerd. And that's what people said. But everybody
actually not true, man. Because see, my mom, she is not a nerd. She's not a nerd by any means.
Does she watch Star Trek?
She grew up watching Star Trek. Like, no,
but
that's
Star
not
Wars
true.
was the same thing, though.
Because Star Trek, it was just because for kids, maybe for adults watching Star Trek at the time, yeah, maybe you were a nerd, or like in your 20s or something like that. Mm-hmm. But like kids growing up watching Star Trek, it wasn't like, oh, you're a nerd for watching Star Trek. It was like there were so many limited things on television at the time anyways that, hey, here's a children appropriate thing to watch. Sure. So you watched it. And so I think it had a huge cultural impact.
And not only that, but Star Trek allowed for females to have strong roles. Uhura. Like not only that, but Captain Janeway.
And later on, Captain Janeway, the first
female captain with her own
ship captain.
And that other character.
And the other girl. And the other girl, Whoopi Goldberg as the bartender.
and not to say that Star Trek is not feminist pro women by any means.
Why would you say that?
Dude, Captain Kirk was
just because Captain Kirk constantly was having sex with people in no way means that it wasn't, because what did the rest of the crew always tell Captain Kirk? Stop having sex with him.
No. But the original series, you could tell it was still the 60s.
Yeah.
Because women were women, and they still needed to be saved, and they still had...
Uhura was still basically a secretary.
She was a secretary. You know what I mean? So yes, she was on there. She was pretty much... Secretary. She was she was like the ladies in the office of Mad Men that were in charge of changing like the phones. You know what I mean? Like in like the closet space, yes, you have a line 2, please. Yes, it was like that's essentially
true. That.
But Hunter, finish your point.
Yeah. So I think the fact that Star Wars' success is rooted in Star Trek doesn't change anything, because Star Wars was the point when it became a wide thing, when sci-fi became something that people wanted to get involved in, not just like people who had an agenda for pushing science or someone who wanted to do it, but it became, oh, I want to express myself as an artist. Sci-fi became an option at that point. Case in point, I already said this earlier, all the actors, all the producers, all the writers, the reason that they do that stuff is because they watched Star Wars and they saw what you could do with the science fiction genre. Because Star Trek was, hey, we're sci-fi, this is cool. Look at all the cool pseudoscience and all this stuff that's actually fairly accurate and really cool. Like, yeah, that's great. But Star Wars was the moment when we were inspired by it. That's the time when people were like, holy crap, sci-fi is amazing. This is when I'm going to be inspired to sit up and create art. I think that by itself spread a lot farther than Star Trek did. Though Star Trek was part of what started Star Wars.
See, I think that Star Trek been able to inspire a lot more people to do other things outside of make more things like Star Trek.
Yes.
Whereas Star Wars inspired people to make more things that were like Star Wars.
Yeah, I agree.
Like more space things, more movies, which are great. Yeah. But Star Trek, it made people think about themselves as people.
And I think that Star Trek make people think about the world. And society, like outside of my mind, like literally, think about race. Like that's why I keep bringing it up, because I think about the different social aspects of hey, how can we make the world we live in currently like the world that exists in Star Trek? You know what I mean? Where there are no wars, there is no. So, they literally in an episode of Star Trek, they literally talk about, because they go to a planet where there's racism. I mean, it's it's a different thing, but it's still racism. And they're like,
they go to the Sneetches on beaches. With the stars
we solved that problem hundreds of years ago. You know what I mean? It's just a thing that used to exist. Yeah. So Star Trek presented us with a world where many of the problems that we still deal with to this day are already resolved.
Unless you're Klingon.
Which
is everybody is cool unless you're a dirty Klingon. So I guess all that to say is that it looks like this debate is still raging on because it's like a tie.
Yeah, it's like a standstill.
So I'm sorry, Internet. It looks like you're going to have to keep talking about who's better, Star Trek, Star Wars. We thought we could fix it. So what you can do, though? You know what you can do, though? You can go find us on Facebook, Watchers Weekly, and tell us what you think, Star Trek or Star Wars. Mm-hmm. Tell us why you think which is better or for what reason and what category or anything that we didn't talk about or something we did talk about. Let us know. Hit us up. We'll be back here later. Well, yeah?
Actually,
yeah.
Here's the reason that Star Wars had a better cultural impact.
Oh, here we go.
Double-edged lightsaber. End of the episode. See you later.
The double-edged lightsaber. I think I did cry a little when I saw the first time.
I remember as a kid, I lost my mind.
It blew my mind.
I thought I was gonna die.
It was like paradigm shifts.
When you thought everything was possible.
You thought of everything.
You thought of everything.
At 10 years old.
Yeah.
And then
they
double-sided lightsaber. You're like,
how? Wait, how?
Yeah. So there you go, guys. Well, hey, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for following us on Periscope. If you've been watching on Periscope, we love you. Thank you for all the hearts, all the questions, all the things. Please join us again. We'll be back. I think that's everything. Thanks, Tim, for being here and talking Star Trek with us.
Great to have you.
Wonderful. You can check out Tim and all of his wonderful stuff that he's got doing at Saving Vinyl City. That he's there doing some drum stuff, so it'll be great. Also, we want to thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to look us up on Facebook, Twitter, follow us on Periscope. We will see you later. And always remember, we are watching.